All right, hi everybody. My name is Peter Allen, and I'm going to talk to you about our meat CSA here today, which we've been running for about 10 years now. Um, I'll just a little background. This is myself and my family. Got three kids, and we are in Southwest Wisconsin, right in the middle of the Driftless region, right on the Kickapoo River. Here is our where we are in the landscape from Google Earth. We've got about half of our property is very steep wooded hillsides. The other half are valley or ridgetop pastures, and stream and spring and stream that runs through them, including a class 1 trout stream, which is super fun. Um, we do rotational multi-species grazing. Here's just kind of an overview of our paddocks, how we run them. We do cut some hay, and we've planted quite a few trees, many thousands of trees, kind of agroforestry systems. It's very rare when you run a multi-species grazing operation like this that you can get a one picture that has almost all your animals in it. So we've got beef here in the foreground. You can see pigs over on the right side, grazing next to the chickens that are in the little coops there, with the sheep on the hillside in the background. So it's whenever I get a moment, I grab my camera and snap it because it's rare. They're usually on far away from each other. So this is kind of how we do it. We run cattle. We're in a transitional phase right now. We've for the last 10 years have been breeding red Devon cattle, and last year was the most severe drought in our region's history, and there was no grass. We literally couldn't graze pretty much the whole year, and we're buying in hay, and we couldn't feed to keep our breeding stocks. We sold those, and now we're transitioning to a model of buying calves and finishing steers, which kind of works for us anyway because we're a meat business, which we're gonna talk about. We finance the whole thing through selling meat. We do sheep as well. And we're getting into goats now too. Multiflora rows has really expanded a lot in the last 5 years. So we're getting into goats as well right now. And then we do 80 to 100 hogs every year. We buy feeder pigs from some Amish farms and raise them on pasture. We have shade structures we move around for them, and we make wallows for them like this. Um, and then we also do Freedom Ranger chickens. We do 700 to 1,000 of those a year, all for our meat CSA. And we raise them in these coops that the last 2 years, we switched styles. We actually just keep them open now and let them range quite far. And we have dogs that keep the predators away. And so that's been working really well and has really cut down on our grain bill for these guys because they can get so much more food. We time our batches with the emergence and growth of the grasshoppers. So we don't really do early batches. We do kind of late summer, and then there's a lot more food for them, and we don't feed them near as much. So that's worked out really well for us the last couple of years. And so we one of the reasons we do all of these things together is because it allows us to create a meat bundle that's a mixed type. We're not just trying to sell beef or just trying to sell chicken. We have these meat bundles. And so we when we first started selling meat, we figured out pretty quickly there's two types of consumers. There's people that want to buy halves and quarters and will pick it up from the butcher and fill out the cut sheet and do all that stuff. And then there's people that don't, and they are buying on a much shorter time frame, and they don't have a chest freezer. And so what we did kind of through an evolutionary process was came to a bundle size that was enough to last people up to a month or even 2 months, depending on how much they cook and how much meat they eat, but that would fit in a standard freezer. And so we kind of ended up right around 12 pounds a month. So this is just a screenshot from our website. And these are the three options. The full share is that 12-pound bundle once a month. The half share is that same size bundle every other month. And then we have what we call a farmer's share, which is closer to 20 pounds. It's usually like 19 pounds every month. And we have quite a few families that choose that option. And the way we set up our meat CSA isn't a traditional CSA where you pay up front and then get meat or get produce or whatever through the season. We don't really have a season. We sell meat 12 months of the year. And so we set it up as a subscription. So people sign up with a credit card, they subscribe to one of these three options, and then their card just gets automatically charged once a month or every other month, depending on which option they chose, based on when they signed up. And what that really is helpful for is it allows us to plan our seasons, how many chickens we raise in our brooders and on pasture, how many piglets to get, how many steers to run, what processing dates we need and when, because we have a really good idea of how much is going out the door on a consistent basis. And we're always growing or trying to grow to some extent. And so we tend to overshoot, by 10 or 20%. So we have the inventory available if and when we grow. But it is really helpful to have a consistent monthly revenue to plan, to make projections for our meat sales and processing and all of that, but also to have regular income. It's not just one big batch that we then have to meter out through the season. So that's been really helpful for us. Um, to take a quick step back and provide a little more context before I go further, my background is not in agriculture. I did not grow up on a farm. I wasn't planning on starting a farm. In my early career, I was an academic ecologist studying restoration ecology and trying to figure out how to restore oak savanna ecosystems in the Midwest. And through my academic research and studying Native Americans and their land management technologies, realized that the ecosystems that were here were not natural, in that if you just let the land go and didn't intervene as a human being, you wouldn't get oak savannas everywhere, which is what we had in Iowa, in Wisconsin, Illinois, all over the Midwest, and large chunks of the Southeast, the Northeast, and even most of California going on up into Oregon were oak savannas, different oaks, but the same grass, perennial grassland, continuous cover of grassland with scattered trees. And so I kind of realized that if we want to restore that particular ecosystem, which I do want to do because they're the most productive and the most diverse, and they build soil the fastest. So it's like the win-win-win. It's like the ultimate ecosystem for these northern latitudes in this continent. And so I've realized the only real way to accomplish that mission wasn't as an academic, probably writing papers and books that nobody was ever going to read, but by actually going out and doing it. So that's the mission. That's why we started the farm. So our mission is using herbivores to manage the landscape for us. And so that's why we have the sheep and the cows and the goats. Now, pigs, there were peccaries here before the big extinction. There were pig-like animals here for a very long time, but they can be pretty disruptive. And chickens were here too, but not in, you would never have like 1,000 chickens in one batch out in the field, right? Well, maybe for short periods of time. When the prairie chickens were doing their mating rituals, there were quite a few who would come in one place at one time, but not for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. So it's kind of an unnatural system. The pigs and the chickens allow us to sell the meat from the ruminants, the lamb and the goat and the beef. I think in a much easier way than we could if we weren't utilizing. So our mission is then to utilize those omnivores, the pigs and the chickens, in a way that is as ecologically beneficial as possible. So we use our chickens, for example, in places where the grass, where the quality of the soil is poorer, especially where we like to cut hay. We run chickens through there, and that really increases the yield of the grasses for the hay, but it also really boosts the soil quality as well. And kind of the same thing for pigs. Pigs are a little harder to manage super ecologically, especially at larger numbers. We just got to move them really fast through the landscape and then let that landscape really heal. I do a lot of seeding of both annual and perennials behind pigs because they do create disturbance. We don't use nose rings. In my experience, they tend to try to rip them out anyway. And then you've got an injury on your hand that you got to deal with and a potential infection. So we just let them do their rooting thing. and then follow up behind them with seed and stabilize that soil as quickly as possible. And it allows us, we've got places where there's fescue grasses that were planted back in the 70s and 80s that are really not great for grazing. And so we do use them intentionally for disturbance to allow us to get other grass and perennial species in those places. And so, anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit of that background about how we came to this position of trying to sell meat. So we're trying to sell meat to make oak savanna restoration profitable at scale. And if we can figure out a way to be profitable and support a family doing it, then it can be more sustainable for other people that can kind of follow this lead. So um, anyway, we have found that these 12 to 20 pound bundles are really easier to sell than any other size. Once you go up more than 20, you can't fit it in a freezer. And so it's going to be much harder to sell larger bundle sizes to the types of people that aren't going to get a chest freezer and go out and buy a quarter. We do that too. And we sell quite a few of those every year, but it's the total sales of that is fairly small in comparison to the meat CSA, which is 90% of our sales is through the CSA. And so next, I'll talk a little bit more about how we have it set up. Basically, on our website, I provide people a snapshot of a representative month, and that's going to be like one package of either beef steaks or pork chops, and one package of either a beef roast or a pork roast. And usually, I switch those up. So if I'm giving people beef steaks, they're going to get a pork roast. Like I was just packing shares this morning, and I gave everybody like a boneless ribeye and a smoked ham roast, like a 4-pound ham roast, because we've got Easter coming up. So I like to give people hams if they want them for that event. And then there's always right around 4 pounds of ground beef, and then a package of either breakfast sausage or brats, and a package of bacon. And that equals right around 12 pounds. But I don't tell them exactly what's going to be in there. It's a CSA after all, right? So I have ultimate latitude to pack these shares. And so that gives me the flexibility to manage my inventory in a very fluid way. And if I run out of one thing, I can substitute something else in. And I'm not stuck having to come up with X number of pounds of one cut or another. I can make it work around what I have. And there has been times where we're low on inventory. My slaughter date's not for another month, and their shares get a little wonky because it's just cleaning out the last of the freezers. That doesn't happen very often. It's only happened a couple times where people have gotten, soup bones and short ribs and some less normal cuts. What we do for those situations is we provide recipes. So one thing I've noticed in a lot of the customers these days that are purchasing meat from an environmentally responsible perspective, like they're trying to do good for the earth, and so they're buying meat, right? That's like a different class of consumer than somebody who just goes to Walmart and buys, a big thing of ground beef, right? Like they're buying meat intentionally as a tool to improve the landscape. And those people often don't know how to cook, and they don't know what short ribs are, and they don't know how to prepare them. And so part of our mission, and in order to be able to do what we do, there's some education that has to go in and helping hold people's hand along the way. And so my wife, she's the chef. She comes up with new recipes every month, and we share those with our customers. We actually stopped doing that super recently because we've compiled all the recipes into like a recipe book that we're sharing as an ebook to all of our customers, and then they just have it all in one place. But otherwise, what we would do is if I was giving people short ribs and any kind of cut that they're whatever in our bundle that month was the cut that people are going to be the least comfortable with, we would give a recipe for that cut. So like an arm roast, a recipe for an arm roast, a sirloin steak, a recipe for a sirloin steak. And pork chops, recipe for pork chops, whatever it is that month, we would pick one of the cuts that we thought that people would like help with and provide a recipe. That seemed to help quite a bit. And we also do a newsletter. And so this is just the way I do it, but I write a newsletter on paper. I have to try it on the computer and print it out, but it's not an email newsletter. There's no digital copy that goes out. It's a physical copy that I print out and put their name on. I think I've got a picture. Yeah, here. So here's one of our bags with meat in it, and it's got this month's newsletter with their name, a space to put their name on it, and then on that newsletter, I just basically keep them up to date with what's going on the farm, good things, bad things, just kind of an update. And I try to do. I take that as an opportunity to do a little bit of education, both in terms of like meat and cooking via recipes, but also just like the realities of being on a farm. And when there's a drought, it sucks, and there's hard decisions you have to make, and people, consumers, they have no idea the reality, like what it's like being on a farm. And through this newsletter, I'm able to communicate that in a way that is informative and educational, but it also creates close bonds with our customers. Like they feel really connected to our farm in particular, and we have extremely high retention rate. And I think this is part of the reason why. I mean, I think it's really good meat, right? So that's the big thing. Like people wouldn't stay around month after month, year after year if it was bad meat. It's good meat. But I think one thing that helps a lot too are these newsletters, which are personalized. I mean, the only people that get these are CSA customers. Like my family doesn't see them, like nobody else sees them except my customers. Um, and uh, and it's intimate information that I'm sharing about the reality of living on the land and farming, and I think that helps a lot. So the way we structure um, the actual logistics of getting meat to people is there's a couple different ways we do it. We're in the middle of nowhere. We don't have a large population base around us, so we've got to get the meat out to people. Um, so our closest cities are, well, the closest town is Viroqua, Wisconsin, and we've got a small pickup location there and some customers. La Crosse is an hour away, and I do home deliveries there. I was there last night. And then we have a pickup location, and I do home deliveries in Madison. That's 2 hours away. And that's the bulk of our customers. I'd say 50% of our customers are in Madison. So it's actually worth doing. I have a van full of meat when I go there twice a month. And then the other thing we do, almost half of the other half, a small number in Viroqua, a small number in La Crosse, it's almost half Madison, and the other half is shipping. So we ship in insulated boxes with dry ice in the upper Midwest. So I basically ship within one state of our farm of Wisconsin. So Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota, which that turns into be basically 90% of the people I'm shipping to are in Minneapolis or Chicago. That's essentially a few people in Green Bay and other, Milwaukee, but mostly it's Chicago and Minneapolis. And I figure, there's 20 something million people in those two cities. If I can't find, a few dozen customers, I should probably be trying to do something else. And it's worked pretty well. It allows me to ship via Speedy, which is quite a bit cheaper than UPS and FedEx. So that is nice. Dry ice is a little bit of a pain for where we are, but I can buy dry ice in Madison and La Crosse, and I have my shipping coordinated with my deliveries. So I pick up dry ice on my deliveries and ship out the next morning, and it works really well. I'm actually not going out of my way to get dry ice. But that has allowed us to grow in a way that wouldn't have been possible without the shipping. We kind of hit a plateau in Madison, and we could have really hit the pavement and gotten the word out, and I think grown there. But we were at a nice, if we had grown there, we would have needed to go more frequently. We would have needed a larger delivery vehicle, and we were at a nice place in terms of our Madison volume. Like we were taking enough to be really worth the trip. But if we were going to take more, then we would need to take more trips. So then it's just a kind of a scale thing, a scale match thing. And so anyway, it's worked really well for us to ship. It's very easy. It's fat. Like in terms of my labor per unit meat that I sell, it's way less shipping than going to Madison. So that's worked out for us in our context. The other thing I wanted to share was about our um, drop-offs. So we have, when we first started, basically I had a friend in Madison that I could hang out on his front porch, and I told customers like, okay, between you know 3 and 7 p.m. I'll be sitting on this guy's porch, and I'll have your meat sitting in a cooler. And that was a very inefficient. It got us started, right? We started getting customers that way, but very quickly that's not a sustainable. People forget, then you're stuck with their meat. You got to haul it all the way back to the farm, 2 hours. We don't have a I wasn't really interested in doing the farmers market thing, kind of for the similar reason is you don't know how much you're going to sell, and you might end up having to take stuff back, and you might not make enough money to make it worth it. And there's a lot of farms in our area selling at farmers markets, so it's kind of saturated for that means, for that mechanism of selling. So we didn't try to go into that world. We immediately started with direct marketing via this CSA program. And one of the things that worked really well was setting up chest freezers in customers' garages. So we've got a customer in Madison that has a detached garage, so it's not attached to his house, and he doesn't keep vehicles in it. It's just kind of extra storage. So it's a perfect situation. And he let me put 3 chest freezers in there, and we have 40 customers a month, maybe more, 50 a month that come and pick up. And it's great because, I've got the list of all the people that are going to be picking up there this month. I pack their meat, I put their name on it, and I drop it off in that freezer, and then they can come pick it up anytime. I tell them it's going to be there by 4 o'clock on Thursday. They can come Thursday night, they can come Friday, they can come next Tuesday. I tell them they have to have it out within a week, but it's very convenient because they're not on a strict time frame. And because it's in a freezer, like if you're doing a vegetable CSA and it's summertime, unless you have a walk-in cooler, people got to pick it up pretty fast because that a lot of that produce is pretty perishable. This is frozen meat in a freezer. It can be there for weeks and it's not going to go bad. And so that works really, really well for us. Um, and and then I've had other situations, like right here. This is in Viroqua. We wanted to have a pickup site in Viroqua, and none of our customers had a garage that seemed to work. But one of them didn't have any kind of outdoor shed. And I said, well, hey, if I build you a garden shed, would you? And you can use half of it to store your tools and lawnmower and stuff. Can I throw a freezer in the other half? And they said, sure. And we have a lot of woods on our property. I own a sawmill. I milled all the wood that you can see behind me and built a house. I mean, I work with wood a lot, and I have a lot of it around. And so for me, in my context, building one of these is trivially easy. I put it together in a couple afternoons. All I had to buy was the screws and the couple pieces of metal for the roof and the hinges for the door. I mean, I probably have 100 or $150 in it, and a couple afternoons of labor. And they're super happy because now they have a place with some shelving. They can put their snowblower in the winter. They can put their lawnmower in the summer, shelves for their tools and extension cords and all that kind of stuff. And then on the other corner, I've got a small chest freezer, and I have a place for my customers in that town to pick up in a very convenient and easy way. One of my strategies for choosing, like, this house is 1 block away from the Viroqua Food Co-op, where all of my customers in Viroqua shop. They go to the co-op, right? So for them to swing by and pick up a bundle of meat out of this freezer when they're already doing a co-op run is very convenient. My friend in Madison, where we have our freezers in his garage, he's 1 block from the Willie Street Co-op on the Near East Side in Madison, where many of our customers do their daily or weekly grocery shopping. So it's very convenient for them to pick up. So I strategically try to find locations close to the places that people are already going on a regular basis to buy groceries, and have the meat put there. So thinking a little bit about the spatial location of your delivery area or pickup area and try to strategically find a location and then work out some kind of a win-win scenario. Like our customer in Madison, who has the detached garage that we store meat in, the win-win for him is that he just gets a free meat bundle, right? So like my rent to him is just a meat bundle. So he's thrilled because he doesn't have to pay for meat and it's not much of an inconvenience for him. The garage is detached in a way that it's not people aren't like walking right by his front door to get the meat. It's kind of in the back and they can park on the side and it's pretty easy. So anyway, that is how we run our meat CSA. From the back end, to chat a little bit about that, we use, the internet has evolved. We've always kind of used the internet to do our sales. And in the early days, there weren't platforms that were sort of you drag and drop, plug and play, ready to go for this kind of thing for e-commerce. I kind of had to build my own websites and find plugins and all kinds of funny workarounds to get all these different options and the different recurring payments, schedules, and all that kind of stuff. Now it's really easy. We actually use Squarespace. You can build a nice website on Squarespace, and their e-commerce platform is pretty good. It's not the best out there, but it's reasonably priced relative to a lot of the platforms out there are built custom for CSAs or for farmers, and those tend to be pretty pricey. Squarespace is just an e-commerce platform. You could just go make some soap and sell it. It's not custom built for farmers. It's a lot cheaper. And they do have recurring payments as an option and lots of functionality around the options of frequency. So you can set it up every week or every other week or every month or every other month or every 6 months or whatever. There's lots of options. You can create lots of different custom sizes and frequencies to utilize that service. And I've been pretty happy with it. I don't have any plans on changing anytime soon. I really like how it just runs in the background. I get an email every time somebody's card is charged, so I can kind of pay attention to how much money is coming in, but it's very steady. Like I said, like every month I know, we've got, 12,000 in revenue coming this month or whatever. And then I can make financial projections around that really easily. We do have customers leave every once in a while, but those tend to be balanced out by new customers joining on. We don't do a lot of marketing per se. Every once in a while, if we really want to grow, we'll encourage our customers to tell their friends. Or I'll send an email out to our email list. I encourage everybody to create and maintain an email list of people that are sympathetic and supportive of your farm. It's really easy to set up on a website a little link where people can sign up for a newsletter, and that's a way to keep people informed. And then if you have things that are extra or that you have to sell this time and that, one of the benefits of the way we've set up our CSA that I appreciate and I don't utilize as much as I could, but I do utilize to some extent, is the fact that I've got essentially a captive audience, right? So these people, like, their cards are getting charged, they're expecting a bundle of meat to show up on their porch or to go pick it up at one of our drop sites. And that what that means is if there's other things I have available to sell, I'm going to be making the delivery or the drop off anyway. I can give them the option to purchase additional add-ons. And so right now we don't do a whole ton of that. What I make available is everything that we put in our bundles, like basically our whole inventory. I basically have an a la carte form. And so I don't do this on our website. I use another service called Jot Form. I just use it because it's free at the scale that we use it at. If we used it more, we would have to pay for it. But at a small scale, it's free, and it's highly functional because it allows you the functionality of adding prices to things, and then it basically calculates the total cost. Now, I don't process payments through there. I have, we already have Stripe, which is the major, for small scale e-commerce web stuff. Stripe is one of the top credit card processors. And so that's who Squarespace uses. So that's who we use. And Squarespace allows you to go in and make custom uh, purchases for people. And so what I do is I give people a form, and it's got everything that we have available, including stuff that we don't put in our CSA, like bones for making broth, or lard, or um, specialty cuts that I don't usually include. I'll have them available. Plus, like if you want to buy an extra steak, or you want to buy extra hot dogs, or sliced deli ham for sandwiches, stuff I don't normally put that stuff in our CSA bundles, but I get it made, and it's really good and really valuable, and people really like it. And they buy it monthly on an add-on. So basically, the way it works is, each one of my different clusters of customers gets their meet at a certain time. So, I go to Madison on the first Thursday of every month, right? So I'm going to Madison this Thursday. It's the first Thursday of the month, the day after tomorrow. So actually, this is a good reminder for myself here giving this talk, is I need to send my Madison customers, as soon as I'm done with this talk, I need to get on and send them an email with a link to that form. So that gives them enough time to fill out what they would like, and then I'll get that list on my morning before before I go to the walk-in freezers and start packing everybody's bundles. I print off my form, the results of that, and this customer, they ordered 5 pounds of extra ground beef and 2 steaks, and this customer ordered summer sausage and beef jerky, and then I add that to their normal bundle, and then I have to make a separate transaction for their credit card. I would like to have an automated way of doing that, but I have not found a software system that will automate that. It probably does exist now. I haven't looked carefully because I've got a system that works pretty well. Another thing I allow for is people to pay in Bitcoin, which some people are really enthusiastic about doing it, and I'll take it. I'll take your money. I'll take your Bitcoin. I'll take gold. If I just want you to buy my meat, so I'll take whatever you got. So anyway, I've bartered quite a bit. We bartered our first midwife. All of our midwifery services for our first kid was paid for with beef and chicken. Um, anyway, that's kind of all I have, I think, in terms of how we run our CSA. I think I went over the website component and the logistics component. So I think now we can open it up and see if anybody's got any questions or anything they want to chat about.
Yeah, so if anyone's got any questions, toss them in the chat. In the meantime, I've got one or two here I can kick things off with. Peter, is there anything that you tried that proved really unpopular with your customers?
Yes, yeah. Thanks for asking that question, because this is a story that I think was really surprising and informative to me, and has helped us be successful. And that is, when we first started, I assumed that customers wanted more choice. And so I thought the more choices I gave my customers, the happier they would be. I could optimize their desires, what they were looking for. And so when we first started up, I told you about the guy with the garage, and we've got chest freezers in there. When I first started up, this is what I did for our customers. I just filled it up with meat, and I had the cuts separated in little compartments. We had ground beef, and then we had the steaks and the roasts. And then I had a scale in there, and I said, okay, you've signed up for 12 pounds a month. You come in and get whatever 12 pounds a month. It's honor system. You got a scale, you got a bag, put 12 pounds in your bag and go home, whatever cuts you want. And I thought that's really innovative. Nobody's ever done that before. Everybody's going to get exactly what they want. Like everything's going to be optimized. And immediately I got feedback from almost everybody that was like, this is horrible. I don't know what to get. I'm worried I'm going to take something that somebody else wants. It was like they were paralyzed by too many choices. It was just too stressful. Like, I don't know what an arm roast is. I don't know how to prepare that. I'm not going to take that. But I can take this steak. But what if somebody else wants that steak? And then I'll feel bad about it or whatever. And so that just ended up being exactly the opposite of reality, especially with the kind of customers that we tend to attract. They don't know what they want. They don't know how to cook it even. Like we've got to, hold their hand through that. And so not only do they not want choice, they're terrified by too much choice. And so it works great for me because I can just give them whatever is convenient for me in a way that I think they will like and that they'll keep coming back. And being able to, that gives me more power over my inventory. Um, and it gives them the freedom from having to make those kinds of decisions. It's just like, hey, we got an arm roast this week. Oh, and here's a recipe on how to use it. Great. I'm sure it'll turn out great. And it always does. And they're like, oh man, that was like the best roast I've ever had. Thank you so much. But they never would have chosen that had they had the choice. And so I think that's a mistake that I made going into it, assuming that more choice was better for the customer. And it turned out to be very, very wrong, at least with our customers.
Yeah, thank you for that. Uh, Anyone else, if you please feel free to toss stuff in the chat. I have another question on marketing, which are like, what are your customers interested in? Because I know you have the ecological ideal that you're focused on. Does that story translate to them, or are they buying your meat for another reason?
I think both. I definitely have customers that are and I think so. I would say both, and I think we're actively in the middle of a change of a transition. Um, I think when we first started, we had a lot of more environmentally focused people that were along for the mission um, and wanted to support the landscape mission, and meat was just a convenient byproduct of the landscape mission. Um, Now I see that as changing a little bit. A lot of those people are going plant-based. They're, you know, giving up meat because they think it's bad for the environment. Um, and I haven't had that many people of my customers have that happen to, but I have a sense that prospective customers are kind of caught in this tension of like, who are they going to like? What is the best way forward to like embrace restoration and landscapes and herbivores, or to embrace, you know, fake meat and more processed things that are plant-based and don't have meat in them. And so I do feel like a lot of our potential customers are getting pulled that other direction. And at the same time, we're getting more customers now that are they're simpatico, like they agree with our mission, but their priorities are more self-sufficiency, being prepared. They want to put meat in their freezer. They want to have a relationship with a rancher. And they may be coming from a more sort of conservative political background, rural background, and they're more concerned with sort of food sovereignty and maintaining some level of connection to a local food system and not giving that up to the large corporations that are making the fake meat and all that kind of stuff. And so I do think that that is changing and shifting right now. And I have noticed it the last 2 years in particular.
Question from the chat here. Uh, what is the total number of customers for your CSA from all locations combined?
We have right around 100 right now. And it's probably 40 in Madison, maybe 15 between Viroqua and La Crosse, and about 45 or so shipping.
Another chat question, which is how much land do you have and how is your mission going at restoring that?
Oh, good question. We have 220 acres that we either own or have lease agreements with. Um, and about half of that is not really grazable. It's really steep wooded hillsides. and we get a lot of uh, shrubs invading our pastures from those woods. And so a lot of our mission is successful in, especially from a soil perspective. We're really, every year the soils get better. Well, last year with the drought, is can't say that, but we've built quite a bit of soil in a lot of places on the farm. We use lots of strategies to do that, including, unrolling bales in places and trampling and getting carbon back in the soil and building up. We do some compost tea sprays. We do biodynamic sprays. We do a lot of stuff for the soil. So we've seen a lot of improvement there. With I when we first started, we did goats, and it got to the point where I couldn't manage the fencing for everybody with just me, and so goats was something that had to go. And I mean, I don't regret it because I had to do it, but one of the consequences of that is that we've really lost a lot of pasture to encroachment, specifically from multiflora rows. And so, and a lot of it is in places that are so steep, like there are steep pastures where I can't mow. And there's some places that I can like back the tractor up and mow down and back up and then mow down, but it's hairy. And a lot of places I can't even do that. It's too steep. And so that has pulled away from some of our landscape goals. I had areas that I had fully cleared out, beautiful oak savannas that I've lost back to shrubs in the last 4 to 5 years. Part of it, I think, has to do with the more mild winters we've been having. And multiflora rose used to seem like it really, like winters were really hard on it, and it took a while for it to bounce back. In the last 5 years, it's just like as soon as spring hits, it's just like growing full blast. It doesn't seem to have been really affected by the winter like it used to, and so it's really spreading fast. And so we're going big into goats right now, and redoing a whole bunch of our fencing and setting up. I used to do electro net for goats, and at a large scale, I don't think that's sustainable from a labor perspective, especially with the extreme topography that we deal with. But I have been slowly through the last decade improving perimeter and permanent interior fencing with 5-strand high tensile, which works fairly well with goats. And so we're trying now to, there's a few more sections of fence we need to be able to really go get goats anywhere in fairly large numbers. And I'm hoping to, over the next few years, get that back under control and open up. So in our situation, in terms of our landscape objectives, half of our farm is closed canopy forest, and half of our farm is wide open pasture and crop fields that we have. When we bought the land, it was in crop, and we've planted basically all of it into native warm season prairie that we then either graze or hay. But so we're adding trees to the open areas, and then we're clearing out the woodlands. So we're trying to basically make both of them a savanna by planting trees in the openings and cutting trees down in the closed canopy situations, because all of our closed canopy situations were historically savannas, and the old legacy trees, the open grown oaks, we have open grown basswood and open grown sugar maple. They're all still there. They're on their last legs and they're starting to die, but they're still there. Their memory is still on the landscape. So we're trying to transition back to that landscape form, but it's a lot of clearing, and it's hard to do it mechanically because of the severity, the slope, and there's not a lot of logging value to be worth having a logger come in and do it. So we got to go the slow way. So it's me out there with chainsaws and then goats following behind, managing the regrowth. I'd say all in all, we're making progress towards our goal, but there have been some hiccups. And the biggest hiccup has been the massive expansion of multiflora rows in the last few years.
Another question about your shipping and drop sites. What made you decide to do drop sites in Madison instead of shipping there?
Well, that's a good question. We did not ship until recently. We only started shipping 2020, I believe, or 2019. It was right around no, it was before COVID because we started off shipping nationwide. And that was great because we got lots of customers right away. I went on a podcast and then all of a sudden I had like, I just mentioned that we were shipping and had like 30 people from all over the country signing up. But with COVID, shipping became, with meat, they don't like to insure it, right? So if it gets stranded in a warehouse in California in July, there's no more meat. They condemn the box, they throw it away, and there's no recourse. Like you don't get paid, the customer doesn't get their meat. You got to either give them more meat or give them their money back. It's just a lose-lose situation. So we had a lot of shipping hiccups when COVID started, and then at that point we said no more nationwide. We're just going to stick within 1 day of here, which is basically adjacent states, and that has worked great. I have a few times considered switching Madison over to shipping. The issue is that shipping is expensive. It costs us the way we do it now, and there are ways we can lower some of these costs if we change some of our systems around a little bit. We just haven't been able to do that reasonably yet. But right now it costs about $30 to $35 all in. You got the box insulation, the insulated bag, the dry ice, and then the shipping cost. And all that for us right now is about 35 bucks. And so with Madison, all of my customers are like, so the one thing about using subscription services is that when, and this is, I think, like a legal issue, is that when somebody signs up for a subscription, you as the owner manager of the website and of the service have essentially no latitude to alter those subscriptions. You can't change it. Like the only way to change it is to have them cancel and re-sign up for something else. So if somebody says, "Hey, I want to switch from every other month to every month," I can't just go in and change that. I have to have them cancel their every other month and then sign back up as an every month. Um, and so if I were going to switch Madison over to shipping, not only would it cost my customers an additional $35 per month, which I don't think they'd be happy with, uh, but I'd have to have them all cancel and then re-sign back up. And that would be, I'm not sure how many people would actually do that. Anytime you have to ask a customer to like do that, some people just aren't going to do it and you're going to lose a few customers. And so we've got a system for Madison that we're taking enough meat there and it's convenient enough that it's worth doing and I can pay somebody to do it and it's financially viable to pay somebody to do that. And so I just keep it the way it is and it works.
I'll just extend an invitation for folks to keep tossing questions in the chat. We've got 8 minutes more or so. There's one more here. So are your goats only for land management or are they in your meat CSA as well?
We haven't done goats at large scale yet. And so I have sold goat meat here and there in the past. I have never added it to our CSA. I do have one particular customer that has told me, if you ever have goat meat available, like put it in my CSA. And I haven't since, she signed up. So I haven't done that. But I don't plan on having goat meat in our CSA. And I'm not planning because we're gonna have to go pretty big on goats. Like I need at least 1 to 200 nannies. And my guess is that I'm just gonna be selling kids at the sale barn as a way to make that work. We've got a in Fenimore, Wisconsin, which is about 45 minutes south of here, there's a small ruminant sale barn that gets a lot of, it's on the map for the ethnic communities in Minneapolis and Chicago. And they tend to have pretty darn good prices for kids, both like right now, before spring, before Easter, but also in the fall. And I don't think I'm going to try to market goat meat. That seems like um, a tall order in our current system and everything. And I might try a little bit just for fun and to see how it goes. Another situation with that is I don't have a great processor that will do um, a lot of goat. It's even a little bit of a hassle for us to get sheep in. Um, so uh, yeah, I think I'm probably I'll do some just for fun. I'll do some trials and we'll get some slaughtered and get some packaged and put the word out there within our current networks and see how much it sells and if it seems like there's going to be a market for it. But my guess, especially with goats, because there's not that much meat on a carcass, like in order to be profitable, I'm going to have to sell it more expensive than beef, essentially. And I don't know how many people are going to be willing to pay that much for goat meat. Um, but I'll give it a shot and just see how it goes. But I'm not making financial projections for the goat enterprise based on uh, selling meat. I'm basing my basically making my enterprise budgets for the goat enterprise based on selling kids at the sales.
A question from the chat. Do you use multiple processors?
We have in the past, and that's for any small scale meat business, that's going to be like a huge issue. We had a situation where we were using a processor that we were working pretty well with for quite a while. And then when COVID hit and it was hard, basically every place booked out until February, I had 8 steers, fat, ready to slaughter June 1st, 2020. And this processor double booked and wouldn't let me bring them in. And I had already sold all the meat. And so it put me in a very difficult situation. And fortunately, another processor opened up the next month in our community, like 30 minutes away from me. And I was able to get them in there right away. Otherwise, it would have been in February the next year. And I mean, that would have destroyed our meat CSA business. Um, and so, processing is always the bottleneck. And right now, we've got a process that we work with that we're pretty happy with, but they're really, really expensive. They're the most expensive option out there. And they do a pretty good job, but for the price, it's a lot. And so it's been challenging to figure out how to make everything pencil out when you're spending. I mean, it'll cost us, upwards of $800 to butcher or $900 when you include slaughter fee a steer. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of money, and it's hard to make all that back. So um, we're kind of right now in a phase where we're basically negotiating with multiple slaughterhouses for rates for our business for the next year.
We've got time for maybe one or two more questions. But can you speak to the margins that you have between delivery and shipping?
Well, with shipping, we charge our customers the shipping cost, so it's the same margin. They have to pay an additional $35 a month um, for their CSA. So it's a different subscription package. Like they sign up for the subscription, but then they have to choose the shipping option, and that tacks on $35 onto their monthly recurring amount. And so it's just a one-to-one. They just cover the shipping costs. The one downside about the way we have our website set up right now is that it's hard to set something up that isn't confusing. And I think we've done a pretty good job of being as uh, minimize the confusion, but it's still pretty confusing. And I would like to minimize it even further. And what I'm considering doing, which is basically making our CSA one price, like say $150 a month. And then that's going to get you somewhere between 11 and 15 pounds of meat a month. And if you're a local customer and you're picking it up on farm, you're going to get 15 pounds a month. And if you live in Chicago and I have to ship to you and it should cost me $40 to ship it, you're only going to get 11 or 12 pounds a month for that $150. But instead of them having to make all of those choices about like pickup or home delivery um, or shipping, I just have to make the choice of how much meat to give them to be worth the amount of money that they're paying me, and what my costs are to get that meat to them. So trying to figure out a way to communicate that, I think that would simplify things a lot. I get a lot of sticker shock when people say like, oh, okay, $125 for 12 pounds of meat. That sounds pretty good. I can afford that. Then they click, add to cart. Okay, and then they go to the cart, and then they have to put in their address. And then once their address is in, because I basically have it set up via zip codes. So I have a delivery range, places that I deliver to personally, and I have those zip codes encoded. And so if they give me that zip code, then home delivery is an option that pops up for them. Otherwise, their only option is on-farm pickup or shipping. So people get all the way to that point, and it's kind of a hassle because they got to input all their personal information in there, and then they get to the point where they get to decide how they're going to get it. Now shipping is the only option that works for them because they own Chicago. They're not going to do on-farm pickup once a month, and it's an extra $40. Well, that's a lot of money. That's a lot more than 120. Now we're talking $165 a month instead of $125. And that's not, it's just a big jump. And so, and this is another example of like basically reducing the decision making of the customer, of just giving them one price and a range of what's going to be in there, and giving myself the latitude to make the decisions. And if they're not okay with it, they can cancel, right? They're under no obligation to stay. That's the one thing that's like, we call it a meat CSA, but I don't have any minimum requirement for them to stay subscribed. So at any point they can, and I just had this happen. Somebody signed up for a half share, they got their first bundle, and then they canceled. They got one bundle at a discounted price because it's cheaper to get to subscribe than it is to just like buy a meat bundle, right? Um, and there's nothing that stops people from doing that. But and I've sold hundreds of these, and that it happened last week, and that's the first time it's ever happened. Like I've never had that happen before. People stay usually. I mean, people usually don't leave. Like once they're in, they're in. And I mean, I've got people in Madison who've been there since the very first meat that we sold on the front porch of my friend's house, 10 years ago, and they've been buying meat from us every single month since then. So, um, but yeah, that is a big challenge, is especially when you're like you've built a website, and people on that are consumers and they're out shopping, their attention spans are very short, and they're not going to give you a very long time to communicate a complicated message. You've got to come up with concise, attractive things that are going to hold their attention and communicate what you need to communicate in a quick time frame, or else they're going to flip to another tab on their browser and they may never come back. And so that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges of marketing meat this way, is utilizing the internet effectively to share your message and to communicate what needs to be communicated, at, such that people feel compelled to give you their credit card information and sign up for your program. So
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. We are at our 1 minute mark. Um, so I'll thank everybody for coming and invite you back for next week, which is our webinar on building a farm for shepherding with Wendy Johnson. So thank you all again, and have a good rest of your day.